My name's Eric. I live in a quiet cul-de-sac surrounded by neatly trimmed lawns and retirees who wave at you with coffee mugs from their porches. Nothing much ever happens here, until the woman moved in next door. She arrived in the middle of the night. Literally. I heard the moving truck rumble into her driveway at 2:13 a.m. and peeked out the window to watch. There was just one woman, maybe late 30s or early 40s, directing the movers with cold efficiency. No family, no help. She kept her head low and didn't say a word to the neighbors. Over the next few days, I noticed strange things. She never left her house during daylight. Her windows were always shut, curtains drawn. At night, I sometimes saw her walking in her backyard with a lantern, digging. At first, I figured she was a gardener, albeit a weird one. Then I noticed the same patch of soil getting disturbed over and over again. One night, I took my dog, Baxter, for a walk. We passed close to her house and he bolted toward her yard. I tugged his leash, but he barked and whined, fixated on the patch she'd been digging. Before I could stop him, he slipped out of his collar and ran toward it. The neighbor came outside just as I was about to enter her lawn to retrieve him. "Keep your animal off my lawn," she said in a voice that sounded like a whisper stretched thin over glass. "Or next time, I won't be so kind." The way she looked at me, eyes so pale they almost glowed, made my skin crawl. I apologized and walked away quickly, calling for Baxter. He came back a few minutes later from around the side of her house, tail between his legs, limping, with cuts on his paws and his collar missing. That night, I filed a report. Not that I thought the police would do anything, but it made me feel better. 3 days later, Animal Control called me. They said they'd followed up and found something. Something they wouldn't talk about over the phone. I met them the next day. The officer had a grey face and a trembling voice. He handed me a photo. In it was a small grave. No coffin. Just a shallow hole. Inside were 3 dog collars. One of them was Baxter's. The other 2 had dried blood on them. He said the neighbor claimed they belonged to her dogs and that she had buried them for ritualistic closure. But when they asked her to produce vet records or any proof those animals even existed, she refused. Legally, their hands were tied. No bodies, no cause. That night, Baxter wouldn't stop barking at the wall we shared with her yard. It was 2:13 a.m. again when the barking stopped. When I woke up the next morning, Baxter was gone. I searched the entire neighborhood. Posted online. Called shelters. Nothing. My gut said she took him. I tried knocking on her door, but she didn't answer. I tried calling the police again, but without proof or a warrant, they couldn't do anything. So, I took matters into my own hands. At midnight, I climbed the fence into her backyard. The ground was soft where she had been digging. My shovel hit something hard after just a few inches. It was a wooden box, old and rotting, with strange carvings burned into it. Symbols I didn't recognize. I lifted it out. It was heavy and reeked of sulfur and old blood. I heard something behind me, a creak. She was standing at her back door, barefoot, wearing the same white dress she always wore at night. Her hands were folded. Her eyes were glowing. "You shouldn't take what isn't offered," she said, almost kindly. "Now something must be taken from you." I bolted back over the fence, box in hand. Inside my garage, I examined it. The box was nailed shut with rusted, hand-forged iron nails. The carvings on top matched no language I knew. I took photos and posted them to a forum online, hoping someone might recognize it. The responses were immediate and terrifying. One user claimed the markings were Solomonic, used in old binding rituals. Another said it was a vessel for trapping something that should not be freed. A third begged me not to open it. I didn't listen. I pried it open that night. Inside was a tangle of animal bones, hair, and something wrapped in a shroud made from stitched animal skin. It moved when I touched it. I dropped the box, screamed, and ran to get my flashlight. When I returned, it was empty. The bones, the shroud, the thing inside, gone. I didn't sleep that night. My walls began to creak. The air felt heavier. Whispers echoed in corners. And then, Baxter came home. But it wasn't him. Baxter looked the same at first. He wagged his tail, licked my hand, even knew the password to his treat jar. But there was something in his eyes, something too still, too focused. He watched me constantly. Never blinked. Never slept. And then the paw prints started. They weren't normal. Each morning I found a new set across the floor, muddy and sharp-edged like claws, not paws. Once I followed them and they led to the attic door. I hadn't opened that door in years. I called Animal Control again, but when they arrived, Baxter acted completely normal. They said I was being paranoid. Maybe even having a breakdown. That night, I heard scratching at the attic door. When I opened it, Baxter was sitting at the top of the stairs. In total darkness. Waiting. He didn't move. Just stared. I backed away slowly and shut the door. The next day, I found dead birds in my yard. perfectly lined up, with eyes removed. The same box had returned to my doorstep, only this time it was open, empty, and covered in blood. My blood. I had a cut on my palm that I hadn't noticed. I decided to dig deeper, literally. Back in her yard at 3 a.m., I started digging beneath the old burial spot. This time I dug for hours, hitting root after root, bone after bone. And then I hit a vault. It was made of stone, sealed with metal. On top, a plaque read, "The offering must be accepted. The debt must be paid." As I stood above it, I heard her voice behind me. "You already opened the box. You took what was inside. It's yours now." I turned around, but no one was there. Only Baxter. Sitting at the edge of the hole. Watching. Smiling. That night, I packed a bag and left. I drove 3 towns over and rented a motel. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I just needed to breathe. Think. Escape. But the next morning, Baxter was there. Sitting outside my door. He hadn't eaten. He hadn't followed. He had just appeared. I called a priest. He refused to come when I showed him the box. Said it was beyond his understanding. I tried burning it. It wouldn't catch. I tried drowning it. It floated, untouched. And then the dreams started. Each night, I dreamt of her backyard. Of bones growing like roots beneath the earth. Of dogs with human eyes crawling through my windows. Of myself, digging, over and over, deeper and deeper, unable to stop. In every dream, the neighbor watched me from the porch, whispering, "You took the offering. You owe the earth now." I returned home one last time, desperate. My house was dark, cold, rotting from the inside. The walls wept. The attic door swung open on its own. And Baxter, he stood on his hind legs in the living room, watching me, grinning wide, human teeth poking through his muzzle. I dropped the box in front of him. "What do you want from me?" I screamed. A voice answered. Not his. Hers. "You were lonely." The box was never buried. It was planted. And then the lights went out.